This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, this report out on the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania issued yesterday, remarkable 884-page document, 2 years in the making, that was released to the public by Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, and included a statement from the grand jury that was convened to investigate serial sexual abuse of children in the Catholic Church. We, the members of the grand jury, need you to hear this. We know some of you have heard some of it before. There have been many other reports about child sex abuse within the Catholic Church, but never on this scale. For many of us, those earlier stories happened someplace else, someplace away. Now we know the truth. It happened everywhere. The report cites 301 priests, clergy, and lay teachers with credible allegations against them. 99 in the Diocese of Pittsburgh alone. Of those 99, the Attorney General Shapiro made a point to focus on a group of 4 who groomed and violently sexually assaulted young boys over a period of time. The stories just get more and more ghastly. To make it easy to target their victims, for example, the priests gave their favorite boys gifts, gold crosses to wear as necklaces. The crosses were markings of which boys had been groomed for abuse.
Oh, it's so sick. I mean, it's like a playbook for concealing the truth, because that's what was revealed, that they have been, not only did they, not go to authorities with this information, they kept this in the files in the churches, and they protected the priests, and they moved them around. And this is what years?
Over the
2018, of the course of
7 decades.
Yeah,
this report goes back 70 years.
Here's the Attorney General, Josh Shapiro.
It was child sexual abuse, including rape, committed by grown men, priests, against children.
And 1,000 children that they know of so far. The investigation is not closed because they believe with this information that came out yesterday, more people are going to come forward. But at that press conference yesterday, Dan, the Attorney General also released a victim video, and it's moving.
I was groomed starting young.
The day I met him, I was around 18 months old.
They targeted me because I was fatherless.
I was in my diaper, and I ran out and ran right to him.
We were taught, the priests and the nuns are God.
Just think, the word God makes me think of him, and I just...
When you see the whole thing in its entirety, it's tear-jerking. And, how do you have a relationship with God after being abused? I mean, a lot of these people are in counseling, but I don't understand why it took so long to come forward.
The report includes priests who stood trial were convicted of sexual assault in the Diocese of Pittsburgh. There's at least 4 that are mentioned specifically. In addition to that, there are indications that administrators and bishops, quote, for this reading from the report, often dissuaded victims from reporting abuse to police, pressured law enforcement to terminate or avoid an investigation.
That sounds like the keepers.
Or conducted their own deficient, biased investigations without reporting crimes against children to the proper authorities. So it was institutional. They were going to handle it or move people around where allegations were leveled. This, we've seen, has had a terrible effect on the Catholic Church, all self-inflicted. You can totally understand why. The Catholic Church bears the responsibility for it at the leadership level.
Of the thousands of victims and 300-plus priests, only 2 can be charged because statute of limitations has run out on all the other cases, which the grand jury wanted to overturn. But one victim who was there yesterday, Julianne Bort, she said, they always made me feel like it was my fault.
I found out today that it wasn't him that they were looking at. They were looking at me.
Because she filed a report back in 2005, and they had an investigation, but the investigation, they said, was centered on her and trying to, sully her character rather than focusing on the priest who abused her allegedly for years.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's the stories of those on the inside who wouldn't go along with the program and wouldn't reassign priests accused of abuse and were instrumental in the reforms that were ultimately taken as these stories came to light. So there's that part of it as well. But there's no doubt that there is the accounting is ongoing. And even though, as you mentioned, most of this has taken place in the past, such that some of those accused are beyond the statute of limitations, beyond the reach of the statute of limitations. But it'd be interesting to me, in Chicago, this report comes out against the backdrop of the CPS sex abuse scandal here. The Tribune reporting on it.
Oh, that none of the moms know about because they all are at their summer homes. Honestly, nobody knows and gives a rat's patoo about the story. It makes me sick.
You're talking about 1,000 children, the Pennsylvania report over 70 years. The Chicago Tribune's report, I'm not remembering the exact number.
213.
Well,
victims.
There were more than 500 credible allegations leveled.
Aye.
And that's over the last 7 years. So, with respect to institutions, I mean, I understand the disgust with the Catholic Church and what church elders presided over. I share it as a Catholic. What about CPS? When does the interest and focus on CPS? Frankly, where's the Catholic Church? This is an opportunity for Cardinal Cupich and other church leaders to say, we know what systemic abuse looks like. Mm-hmm. And we've had to account to our parishioners, to civil society, to God for what occurred on our watch. So we're telling you these things should be looked into. You should take these allegations seriously. There should be to borrow a movie title, spotlight on CPS and what's going on there at present and what's been going on there for, say, the past 50 or 70 years. Wouldn't that be interesting? A system of, once upon a time, 400,000 kids, now more like 3.25. That's still a lot of children. 90% minority? Is that why we don't care? I don't know. I mean, all we have are Champagne socialists on the lakefront, and then the actual families that populate whose children populate the overwhelming majority of the schools. So when does the reckoning come there? The interest, reckoning, I'm getting ahead of myself. The interest. When do the trial lawyers representing those victimized, and we've detailed the cases, as did the Tribune, of the adults in the system who've been convicted of crimes and sent away, convicted of abuse of children and sent away. Where are the civil suits? Where are those plaintiffs' attorneys? Isn't it odd to you how quiet everybody in Chicago is to hundreds of cases just in the recent past that the Tribune looked at? And so why... What does it take to muster interest, much less outrage, in this city? I honestly don't know. It's not killing people.
No.
It's not young black men killing other young black men. We know that people don't have an interest in that. I got it.
Boring.
It's not.
I mean,
it's not sex abuse in CPS. I get that. We're more interested in sex abuse in Pennsylvania, in the Catholic Church in Pennsylvania. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be interested. We should be interested in everywhere. But we can't muster the only thing.
The problem. Why it didn't make network news? The priest abuse. Everybody led with that, as they should have last night. But when the CPS sex scandal was going on, nothing.
Who watches network news? That's
I
under
do.
60.
Okay. I know you think I am 60, but I do. It's appointment television.
Yeah.
But I and other people I know watch, nobody cares. I'm just saying it didn't even rise to the national network TV level.
The only thing the political ruling class in Chicago gets upset about, and all those high-minded champagne socialists, is if Chicago police actually accidentally help endorse federal immigration law. Then the outrage comes. but little black and brown kids being abused by other kids, or the adults
special needs
in
kids
CPS,
in CPS getting abused by other students.
shoulder shrug.
Yeah, I love this. When
It's
people come up to me
remarkable.
like, "What? Now, what was it? What's going on?"
And what was the response from Tiny Dancer? Hey, if anybody's got any ideas, I'm all ears. Tiny Dancer runs the Chicago public school system. Let's see, he had Brizard. He had Barbara Bird Bennett, who
robbed us blind.
That was his rock star, by the way.
Oh yeah.
That was Barbara Bird Bennett, who's in federal prison for
4 more years.
$20 million worth of fraud. That was Rahm's rock star. Then of course your political flunkies like Forrest Claypool, and I don't know
choo-choo train. Right?
and I don't know Janet.
Janice Jackson. I see
Miss
her
Jackson,
often.
if you're
She's out
nasty.
there. Her kids go to CPS too, and she's as a volunteer CPS person.
Well, what about the superintendent then? She's not responsible for what's happened up until this point. She just got there.
Right.
It seems to me like she could have the standing to make the case. Why wait for Tiny Dancer or the 50 trained SEALs on the city council to do anything? That's never going to come. Somebody else in charge of the system, at least with the title that suggests they have some authority. What about her?
Well, I will say this. Every teacher, before they start in a few weeks, has got to be re-fingerprinted and the background check system gone in. And if you volunteer too, you've already had to have done that, or else you're not volunteering. That's the one change that was made. That's only concrete evidence that I have of change.
Candace and DuPage.
Really sick about that whole priest scandal. I read yesterday on Twitter that I may have the organization wrong, Dan and Amy, but it's UCCHB or something like that is the organization that's supposed to help all these thousands of people with therapy. Well, guess who owns that? The Catholic Church. I mean, this whole thing, when you do that to a child, you ruin their whole life. Did you hear that old man say that he couldn't even love his child or hug his child? And then did you hear that woman say she never had a family or a kid? She never got married. She never had a family. I mean, it ruined their lives, So, I mean, I don't want to hear that, about, it's been too long ago. No, these priests should all be put into a special jail with a bunch of pedophiles, and that's how they should be treated. I mean, they should be completely shunned. We don't have enough brutal punishment for people like this, honestly. And then what happens? Okay, so 1,000 people came forward. Well, there's probably another 1,000 people who are not going to come forward, who are now victimizing other boys and girls. That's the scary part.
Right. Thanks for the call, Candace. Right. Which is why anywhere that it exists and there's indication that it's systemic on top of it, it's not the one-off pedophile in a van loitering around a playground. You're talking about institutions with substantial resources and authority and responsibility for thousands of children. It's the Catholic Church, yes, and it's also school systems. And so when you get an indication that something on the scale of the church is occurring and the response is indifference, I mean, I don't know what to say to that. You would think the Catholic Church scandal would have everybody on edge, but not here. On edge, can't even generate any interest. Mm-mm. Joe and Manuka.
Yeah, there's 53,000 priests in the country. There was 0.002% of the people that were in the last 10 years that have been accused of anything. That's like 3 priests out of the 52,000. So the church largely has cleared it up. They realized with the John Jay report that most of the encounters were so homosexual in nature. They were post-pubescent teens and young men. And that was a problem that was happening in the 70s and in the 80s because of the seminaries were like raves for gay guys. And a lot of people were afraid to speak up about it. But they've done the things that they could to clean up. Now CPS has to do their job.
Well, thanks for the call, Joe. I mean,
And there's women, too, who were abused. It's not just...
correct.
Yeah.
Well, that was the Keepers story.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you don't hear about, when you always think, I mean, what do you first think of when you hear about the Catholic Church sexual abuse scandal? You think of little boys.
Well, that's what it
That's
mostly
why.
was.
Right.
But you're
women
right.
were,
There were
and that-
girls, too.
yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he's right in terms of Joe from Manuka, his read from the John Jay report in terms of the order of magnitude. That's true, but obviously a small percentage of a big number does big damage, and that's what happened at the church. Mike in Crown Point, Indiana.
Morning, Dan and Amy. I was married to a Greek Orthodox woman, and Orthodox Church is very similar to Catholic in terms of beliefs and so forth. Major differences, the Pope. But the reason you don't hear about it in Orthodox is they allow priests to marry. I wish the Catholic Church would get rid of that stupid rule. I don't know how long it's been around, but that's one of the principal causes for dissuading qualified, good people from becoming priests in the first place.
Thanks for the call, Mike.
Episcopal priests can marry, too.
Okay. Tom in Deer Park.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Yeah.
Not everyone has their fair share of scandals.
The scratch beneath the surface of any big institution like that, and it'd be interesting what you'd find. Tom in Deer Park, sorry.
Hi, good morning. You touched on the CPS scandal and how it's being ignored. And then every day we've got our political nonsense. It's gone from a 24-hour news cycle to a 2-minute news cycle, and it's on to the next thing, what happened today. And now this church thing that came out yesterday, we're Catholic. We thought this nonsense was in the past. We had this bad stuff, this terrible institutional stuff, and we thought it's in the past. And now just in Pennsylvania alone, it's come to light that it's not in the past, and it's contemporaneous again. And as you touch on, Dan, we're all fallen people, but to me, it's another institution shot, and that always boils back down to the people of the institutions, whatever they are. I don't know if it's a lack of outrage from us because of our influence, or just our inability to absorb more stuff because we have social media and cable television and radio where it keeps getting thrown right at us. And I'm just at a loss. It really upsets me. And I don't know, they're going to deal with it out there in Pennsylvania, but I think for the public, it gets swept under the rug till something weird happens on Twitter tomorrow.
Thanks for the call, Tom. It's been just a point of order. 90% of the cases in Pennsylvania occurred before 1990. So going back to what Joe from Manuka said, this largely has been in the past.
Right.
And then there were finally steps taken to address it in the present and prospectively. And
well, good for the Catholic, the dioceses of Pennsylvania.
Well, and other places. But the issue is lessons learned from this, so you don't see it repeated anywhere else. That's the point. Okay. And that's why I don't understand why we're not taking an interest in CPS as a city, so that whatever is going on, other than re-fingerprinting the tens of thousands of employees in CPS, whatever's going on doesn't continue to escalate the way it was left to escalate in the church.